It's good to be here. Not only am I from Baltimore, but I live in Mount Vernon by the Bun Shop off Reed Street. So Baltimore remains home. It's good to be here. You know, Pate the People, we started it a couple years ago as a place where we could have conversations about news that people didn't know about, solutions, having activists on that wouldn't be on other national platforms because they wouldn't be invited. And it's been really powerful to see the move. But when I zoom out, I'm reminded that so much of this work is about telling the story, about helping people understand what's true and what's not true, so that then they can be primed to take action. And technology is a key part of that. Technology allows us to get and build community in ways that we otherwise wouldn't have been able to. It allows us to accelerate the pace of reaching out to people, spend a lot of time actually trying to figure out what the data is, or how do we use data that is not numbers, but people's stories and lives to inform it. I think about the police kill about 1,100 people a year. What a lot of people don't realize is the police actually kill more people in suburban communities than almost all other communities combined. It's not cities, right? And we think about Maryland, Baltimore County police actually killed more people last year than all other police departments combined. When we look at the last year of SWAT team data, Prince George's County, Montgomery County, and Anne Arundel County actually deployed the SWAT teams more than Baltimore City. So technology can help us understand and pinpoint where problems are so that we can be really focused about what the solutions are. And that's really powerful. You know, I think about Twitter, Twitter was very big for us when we were in the street in Ferguson. Twitter was big when we were in the street in Baltimore. That Twitter has actually been a huge platform for organizing across the country. But we know that technology rarely, if ever, replaces offline organizing. That there will always be a need to continue to build community with people around you, in front of you. That actually just is an important part of the work, and that doesn't go away. The last thing I'll say is that, you know, I'm always mindful too that changing the conversation does not necessarily change the outcomes. And we are talking about race and justice in ways that, we haven't talked about in decades. When you look at the numbers, though, we're reminded that the police actually killed more people this year than last year. That there was no dip during quarantine, lockdown, COVID, the protests. There was actually no decrease at all. So it's a reminder that talking about it is a huge first step, that you can't fight what you can't name. But that's just not enough. So when I think about the city, the city of Baltimore is a great example. I was a youth organizer when I was 16. I helped lead Youth as Resources. I opened up an after school center on the west side of Baltimore. I worked in the school system as the chief human capital. And I'll tell you that the outcomes today in the city around children, youth, and families look the same, if not, or similar, if not the exact same than they did when I was 16. That we have dumped money into places and we've done everything but actually fix the structure. That the nonprofit community in Baltimore has tried its best to sort of, hold the city up. But until City Hall and the legislature actually invest in community in a structural way, the outcomes will be stuck. And part of our work is to build the case, help people to run for office, do all of that so that the structure actually changes in the city, because people deserve something much better than what they have today. So I'm excited about PeaceTech. I'm excited to see what happens. There's so much energy in the city. There's so much talent in the city. And part of organizing is reminding people that you always have power, that organizers can't give you power. What organizers can do is help give you tools to access that power. It can help you see tools and help expose you to resources, because the power you've had is already there. Nobody gave that to you. You already had that. And the city of Baltimore reminds me of a place often where we just need to press to get the change that we deserve, because it's on the horizon. And I feel really good about that. So I'm excited. I'm excited that PeaceTech is coming to the city, Sheldon. I'm excited that there will be a host of people who have access to resources that they might not other have had. And I'm excited that they'll be a part of a network of people across the country who can support.
Thank you, DeRay. This is Tim Receiver. I'm the Director of Programs at PeaceTech Lab, and it's a real pleasure to have you with us today. Really appreciate it. I was just watching an interview that you gave with the Colbert Report. It's been a few years, but the one thing you said was the difference between the civil rights movement in the 60s and the civil rights movement now is the role of technology. And looking at the landscape, definitely that is the focus of the next 3 weeks that we have.
Yeah, think about, we just have access to tools that they didn't have, right? That like I can talk to a million people whenever I want to. I can talk to people in different states whenever I want to. We can Zoom like that. Like we just have tools that they didn't have, and we learned so many lessons from the way they fought, who they fought, like the plans that they had and strategies. And the internet allows us to scale those things in ways that were just different to them. You think about what it meant to have to wait for the news to come on to get a message out. The news is a nice to have for us. It's not a necessity. But what is true, right? And this is why offline organizing does never disappears, is that we don't own any of these tools, right? I don't own Twitter. I don't own Instagram. Black people don't own that stuff. And if that disappears tomorrow, we're like, then what? Which is why like offline organizing will always have to be a key to this. The online organizing helps expand, it helps create community, all those things. But you've seen when the platforms get hard, or when you don't feel safe on the platform, or like then if that's the only place you organize, then you're stuck. I think about Twitter. The first person ever permanently banned from Twitter was banned from raising money to try and get me killed. And like, there was a point where like Twitter wasn't always like the safest place, but I'm still there. It's just different how I'm there. But what if that was the only place that I had community? Like then I'm sort of screwed. So we think about the internet as an important way to buttress and augment and enhance the work of organizing. I never think about it as a way to replace it, but we also think about these relationships that you build online as authentic, right? That like I've been connected to tons of people that I never would have known at all, if not for the internet. Just organizing in Baltimore County around the Baltimore County police legislation that just passed is like one of the dopest organizers I was with was a 17-year-old who just graduated from high school. And like she had one of the best analyses. She understood the landscape really well. I went to high school in the county, like she got it. And we would have never been in a community together if not for technology.
Yeah, that's amazing. And even looking at what you were doing in Ferguson with Twitter and just keeping that struggle, alive in the media, through your activism on Twitter was really inspiring. So yeah, thank you again for your time, for joining us. I'm so glad that we were able to get you for the time here. But some of the things that we'll be doing in the next week, today we're going to look at some of the platforms on racial justice around the U.S. and what they're, how they're already handling these issues, and then what the data is showing in Baltimore. But next week we're going to be doing a lot of hands-on training, with messaging apps, with social media apps, with mapping, with digital security tools. And so that's, I think it kind of fits into some of your passions as well.
Yeah, I'm excited. I can't wait to loop back at the end to see how the learning was. But, especially in the city, when we look at everything that we could track is disproportionately impacting people of color. Like there's not one metric that we can track. So the question becomes like, what do we do to fix it, right? Like, how do we fix it at the root level, not in one neighborhood, not in two neighborhoods, but all of the neighborhoods? And what would it take? And I think that part of that dreaming, because, like the way the city has worked is that we sort of target, like, there are all these communities I didn't even know existed, like Locust Point, all those places. Like when I was a kid, I didn't even know Locust Point was a place. I'd never been on that side of the, I mean, I've been right across the harbor, but I didn't know all those communities were back there. Like all those places that are like, it's all white essentially in like a very different part of the city. And then you look at places like parts of the Alameda, or you look at, I grew up Poplar Grove and Pressbury, and like the neighborhood I grew up in looks just like it did when I was 10. And that means something, right? That like the city has made choices, and how do we actually highlight those things and sort of push and put together a plan that people can get behind that's like, we deserve this.